Okay,
Hello.
let's see now.
Yeah, this is working. So, yes, welcome to our sixth edition of Farmversities Rising. And we had a series of 5 sessions, and then a tremendous pressure came to continue the series. And that's a good thing. I think we'll continue to do this every Tuesday. And the sixth session now is with the leaders in the Farmversities who are women. Now, a bit about the Farmversities. These are grassroots projects, farms, learning spaces, academies who are supporting education and learning in farming, food, forestry, processing, anything. And it can be through permaculture, natural farming, any maker spaces, all are inclusive. And Farmversities Alliance is an informal gathering of such places. Our aim is to collect and connect people to create a melting pot for ideas and create opportunities for each other to interact and improvise together. Uh, I'll put it all out. We are not too hopeful about the universities out there, the agricultural universities. They are doing their work. Uh, and a lot of wisdom is sitting in the fields with the people, with the elderly. This is what Farmversities will gather besides a whole lot of other things. So that's Farmversities. This is Manas. I'm your host. And let me introduce, we have Aparna from NCR here. We have Madhu from Hyderabad, Andhra, not Andhra, Telangana. And we have Malvika from near Mysore in Karnataka. And we have Padma from, again, from Telangana, from Aranya. And with that, let me open the space and invite each one of our panelists to introduce themselves uh, in brief, a bit about their journey and what about their spaces, what they have created. And of course, we'll be exploring a lot more about these spaces and the work, but just in brief, let me have Aparna speak first.
Hi, Manas. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for doing this, for getting this together. It's a pleasure. So, to be very brief, BJOM happened accidentally to me in 2014. I was, I trained to be, studied to be a lawyer, and then I drifted into this because I was doing a lot of animal work and it brought me to this space. And so, my work is I today run an animal sanctuary and a farm, a natural farm. We grow lots and lots of crops. And somewhere I found the solution to how why integrated farming is what works for animal welfare as well and animal protection as well. And that's how this whole thing has come about. And so today growing food happened to me subsequently after the animals came in, and now I've realized that both are inseparable, and that's what BJOM stands for today. It's integrated natural farming with where we grow a diversity of crops using natural farming techniques. I've adopted a lot of techniques from whatever I read and heard and studied and saw what I could apply where I am. I am in the Gangetic Plain. I'm in Uttar Pradesh. That's where I'm farming. And I started on a leased piece of land. And that's where we grew Bijom. And today we are finally home. It's almost like it's after a great flood. So there's a certain mythical aspect to it as well that I feel very significant. And so now today we've actually grown, the last year has been about bringing Bijom home. And over the last 6 years, we've also been doing a food forest on the side. Unlike a lot of people, my friends here, who have got to know over the years, and huge respect to them, because I think it's only watching a lot of people's work that you also kind of build yours. You learn from others and what they do, and try it on your farm and see what works. You fail, you succeed, and that's how this has come up. So Bijom is today many things inside it. It's got like a small eco village. It's got a multiple projects with people, with women, with fellow farmers, with land, soil, diversity, crops, and animals. So that's what Bijom represents. Yeah.
Thanks, Padma. And let me invite Padma uh, for the third time in these sessions. It's hear from you.
So, good evening, everyone. And my name is Padmavati Kopla. Like, I'm the CEO for any agriculture alternatives, and I do work with the farmers and especially with the women farmers since I think 90s. It's around 35 years. So I do work with the tribal farmers, tribal women, and Dalit women, and small and marginal farmers, dry land, irrigated agriculture, and then drought areas, how the farmers can manage the drought. And I do teach the permaculture. I do practice permaculture in 11.5 acres land with around 135 fruit species, around 89 biomass plantation species, and then vegetables, and then crops. It's also like in hundreds, like not calculated how many are there. Still, like there's just so much is there. And I'm also one of the team member in teaching of the permaculture and supporting other farmers, and also working with the women, especially in the regenerative journey, like supporting women farmers to design their farms uh, in the concept of food security. And also when we are working with the tribal women farmers, around 1,000 women farmers, we work, each one of them 1 acre farm was developed for them with the tree-based farming systems. And also working with other tribal farmers to support permaculture way, providing indigenous seed varieties, and then keeping them, establishing seed banks and sharing of the seed. So this is continuously happening, and also innovations are happening with the biochar making, how the crop residues can be managed and how we can fix the carbon in the soils. So this is another aspect, and since last 4 years we are into that. Also, like providing and supporting the women farmers to for the animal integration of indigenous cow breeds and buffaloes, and along with the regenerative farming systems to continue their farms in sustainable way. So that is another thing. And every month we do teach permaculture designers course at RNA Permaculture Academy. And then from like farmers all over the country and the international community will come and stay here for 13 days. They do complete permaculture designer course and the teachers training course, and specialized courses will happen there. So that is in Telangana, in Jahirabad area. It's like it is in around 100 kilometers away from Hyderabad. So that is about brief about me. And I do work with irrigated agriculture farmers in Andhra Pradesh. Like I can say, of farmers I work, and also I support the farmers producer organizations, formation and institutional development, and then fighting forward backward linkages, especially women farmers producer companies limited, which I supported for them intensively. This is about me.
Thanks, Padma. Thanks for your introduction. And let me hear from Malvika next. Your mic is switched off, Malvika.
Yeah, namaste everyone. So it's so lovely to see all the beautiful women here who
there seems to be an internet lag here in your connection.
an inspiration, for me, have been an inspiration and continue to be on this journey. So more than being here can you hear me?
Yes, now it's very clear.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry you won't see my beautiful face, but yeah, I'll continue to talk.
We are going to miss that. Please continue.
Yeah. So, I've been actively in this space since 2014, which we call the open shell farm, where I live and that's my home. But my journey and the way I ended up here, goes right back into my childhood, where I used to frequently visit Rajasthan with my parents, and I was exposed to land-based systems right from then. And in my late teens, I lived on the farm, post my marriage, and I was growing silkworms, rearing, milking buffaloes, sowing paddy, doing that kind of work. And then later on, I moved to the city, and with all the other things that I did, to make a living, I also ended up, studying water in the Indian Institute of Sciences and working on research. And there I realized that it was more important for me to reconnect to the roots, and to work more at the grassroots level, because I was enamored with the amount of research that went in, but it was disappointing that, not much of the research was being translated into action. And that actually shifted things within me. And I started looking for a piece of land, and 2014 Open Shell Farm happened. And I moved there lock, stock, barrel, and started small with no specific intention, it just was organically evolving and growing. And the fact that I wanted to be connected with the farmers and work at, the basics of restoring the soil and conserving water and reviving traditional foods, bringing back the climate resilient crops. And it started with that. And today, Open Shell Farm is still, it's an ongoing process. It's never complete. And it's a demonstration site for regenerative farming. And we do teach permaculture courses. We've just started our design course, and every year we're planning to offer one course, and we have one coming up in February. We've been doing a lot of small courses as well. And the land itself is very strategic in the sense that it's next to the national park and reserve forest. And it's quite challenging in multiple ways, and I won't go deeper into those. And today it's become a hub for learning for the rural, mainly the local, the panchayat level and the taluk level, at the taluk level, but also attracts a lot of people from outside, in terms of volunteering and interning. And we're growing pretty much quite a bit now, and we can sometimes, up to 50-60%. Whenever I come to Aranya, I see, how bountiful their harvests are. And, every time I compare as to how, we also one day are going to be, somewhere on those lines. Yeah. So that's where we are at this stage. Can't hear you, Manas. You're on mute. You're still on mute.
Yeah, I'm saying that I remember the thin road dividing your farm and the elephant corridor. And coming to Madhu coming to Madhu's farm was like, I still remember the first time I had the Nati papaya in 2016. Please.
Carried it back with you as well.
Oh yes, we took the seeds and we planted them at our green.
I have her papaya seeds as well. I mean, I have her saplings growing in our farm as well, along with the red Sespania grandiflora.
Wow. Yes, Madhu, let's have your story.
Yeah, like Malvika said, I think there are a lot of connections here. My journey actually started in the late 90s with my own health issues, and I was trying to find solutions. And I remember trying to become a good customer. So I wanted to be conscious about the environment, And even though I didn't make it a career at that time because I wasn't sure whether environmental sciences was something. So as somebody working, I was choosing in my own lifestyle a better, from anywhere from better skin products to better food, and those were some of the things, and being aware of the food systems. And that started in 1998, 99. And I was fortunate to grow up on a farm for just in the summers, but consciously leaving my desk job uh, and addressing some of the underlying issues that I was going through, I landed up on the farm as well. It was not a very, how would you say, thought of. I spent a whole year at Bhumi College, which is again one of, I would say, a eco university. I was one of the first batch out of Bhumi College, and a lot of insights about food and food systems in India and things like that. And I happened to have this thing of giving gyan. So then I realized instead of just giving the gyan, it's time to actually go and work on it. And I started in 2013, and in 2014 I did we did I think a 10-day or a 12-day course with Narsana and Padma. It was like a traveling university of farmers going from one farm to the other. And that was my start of my permaculture journey. And then I did again another permaculture course with Rico. So my journey teaching, or rather I call it as facilitating, started actually at Aranya. I've done some short courses also with Malvika, and then even with Rico at Kailasam Farm, the farm school in Timbuktu. And in this journey, one of the things I realized was the big part of permaculture, which is fair share. How do you give back? And I remember thinking, when my hair is white, I will do that. But something that Narsana actually said, no, you start the day, you start practicing. So I remember thinking, okay, I'll take one session kind of thing. So from one session, I've gone to a point where we did many online courses during COVID. And most of our work through Teaching Where It Matters, which is something a colleague of mine, Rakshit Kutapa, goes with his name Kuts. He came up with the idea that not everybody in the Northeast can come to the mainland because there is a disparity of income. So we concentrated in teaching permaculture design courses in Manipur, in Nagaland, and we also are working with some of our students there who are from an NGO background. So right now we've got some project in Assam. So the idea being that how do you facilitate this knowledge, but again, how do you make it localized? And that's where my concentration is. So my farm, I'm the 5th generation farmer on this land in Telangana, about 50 kilometers from Hyderabad, which is my experiment ground. It is a full-fledged farm. I have to make a living from it for the salaries I have to pay and things like that. But the knowledge from that then is transferred to the courses. And right now, currently, as we speak, we have 2 online full PDCs that we are teaching online. So we're moving with technology, we're changing, we're adapting, and we're saying, how do we decolonize permaculture? How do we give opportunities to everybody who can't join us in person, and also being in spaces where they can't join us because of income disparity. So my colleague now is actually based in Nagaland itself. So it's a big interest of ours, and also to help understand that they also still have lots of tribal systems left. So how do you connect the knowledge, of the elders, that they're still there, and then also the younger people? So that's been our journey. And yeah, so that, yeah, there's 5 decades worth of information summarized, but yeah, if there are other questions later on, I can always answer.
That we we need to I address Aparna before anything, is that, see, we need to create this ecosystem in North, we desperately need. And yours, I know, is a very fertile space. So you, and there's a lot to learn from Padma here, and from Malvika and from Madhu, to get our inspiration. Aparna, are you ready for this? So I'm curious about knowing, because we have a all women panel here by design. What are the challenges and the strengths which, as a woman, you have experienced or observed from the personal experience? I would like to open with this question, and let me ask Aparna first onto this.
Sorry, somebody mic is on.
Uddhav, please switch off your mic.
So I grew up in Chennai, and I had no knowledge of the North when I moved here. I hadn't grown up here as a child. My Hindi was pretty rudimentary. I just managed to pass by, and I found myself farming in Western UP. It's one of the, if from whatever, because I've grown up in the South, I have the small advantage of knowing both spaces. My family still lives in Chennai. That's where I go for my holidays. And so I'm quite familiar with both these spaces. And UP is a completely different kettle of fish. It's large, it's vast, huge lands, um, and quite underdeveloped in the rural areas, in the sense that women don't have the kind of education or the opportunities that Hello,
Hello, yes,
can you hear me?
yes, can hear you.
Yeah. So can I continue? Sorry. I
Yes,
can't
yes.
see anybody suddenly. Sorry. Thank you.
Mm.
So women don't have the opportunities and such like as they have in the South. There is very less education here. So when I actually got into the farming scene, I looked completely out of place. A lot of people laughed. I used to have people just come and sit in the farm in chairs and laugh at me. And I really wasn't sure what I was doing either. So I had to, go with it. And that's how it began. And I had to learn terminologies which I didn't know. Farming itself was unfamiliar. On top of that, the language was unfamiliar too. And being a woman, that to an urban woman, was a huge disadvantage. I stuck out like a sore thumb, like they say. I landed up in a car with an iPad, or I was trying to Google and say, what is farming? That's how I started in 2014. So I've really myself come a long way. Now I think in Hindi, if understand what I mean. That's because that's who I am today. I feel I belong to UP. I so much has changed for me as a person individually. So it's been a lot of personal growth as well, because I've understood the landscape. I have so many friends here. I understand how the villages work. I understand how these communities work now. So it's been a huge learning curve. So for a woman farmer itself is tough here in the northern context, and for me it was doubly tough because I entered the scene as an outsider. I didn't belong here, right? And but having said that, I think farming in UP is a pleasure because, like you said, there is lots of water, lots of sunshine, huge lands. We are on the Gangetic Plain, which cannot be the most fertile and with a lot of alluvial soil. So there's no other reason to complain. I can't really complain about having no water or having a rocky terrain or even there's not even a slope. It's just plain arable land. But that is also the tragedy because there is only monocropping here. These the kind of conversations we have are almost absent where I am, and it's very patriarchal. right? So it's quite hard. I've had other kind of challenges, not growing. Growing has actually been although it was tough initially, I didn't know what I was growing. Initially, I didn't know how things grow. And so that itself was and like all of you know, the first few years we were just attacked by pests. The only thing I knew was that I wanted to be organic, or I didn't want to use pesticides. So I just went with one or two goals and dived into it literally, and felt my way through. And over a period, um, I think after 3, 4 years, like when the abundance started to show, I had only read about it. I read about growing soil. I read about all this. Then I slowly started having people come and see what we are doing. I had to earn my respect there. I don't know if respect is a big word, but I had to earn my place. Let's put it that way. So today we, I think, are growing a lot of crops surely just out of sheer hard work. Most of those crops are not grown here anymore, although they do grow. So I don't know if you understand the difference. The difference is they grow here, but they are not grown here. So that way we have a huge diversity of crops, and it's been a challenge. Um, Being a woman, it's a place where women are not even allowed to sit with men in the same room. That's the kind of space we are talking about traditionally. So it's been quite a climb that way. Yes, lots of stories around it. It's very hard to communicate that on a Zoom call. But
But I have a question here. But has
yeah,
anything changed now because of you
yes, yes.
being there?
So a small incident, like I remember going to one of the local farmers' homes, and I went and sat in the living room because we were invited. And he just said, please get up, go and sit with the women inside. So I was a bit taken aback, but I've become very wise. You don't challenge such things. So I quietly got up and went inside. Then he found, um, uh, my husband had accompanied me, and he doesn't know anything about farming, although he's hugely supportive. So he started talking to him about fasal and crops and sugarcane and MSP. And so my husband just said, you'll have to call my wife. He was stunned that I knew anything. Then I had talked to him for an hour. And after that, he keeps calling me now and saying, "Aap kab aa rahe ho? Aap kab baat karoge humse? Aapke अच्छे ideas hain." So, you have to, it's not a given. It's not automatically when they see you, just because I have a farm, they don't think I know. I've had occasions where I did a training, and 2, 3 farmers came from Amroha and they said, "Kaun sikhayenge?" When they saw me, they turned around and sat and said, "Inse nahi sikhenge." So, I've had so many small things, but at the same time, I should say, once they know you're hardworking and you mean you are here to stay, and you're putting in your effort, I think, and because of the large team, we've grown a team around us. It's not just me, although I'm representing that whole team. Once they see all our people and how they work and what we're producing, then it's become a grudging, not just respect, but now they understand that we are really serious and we are earnest. It's really been you'll have to prove it to them, and then once they've seen successive crops without pest repellents, without pesticides, without, and grown organically and well, then they begin to come and say, "Are you sure you grew it without anything? How did you grow it?" The curiosity builds. What is this?
Uh,
uh you know so
That's
yeah, it's
that's an
gradual.
that's an amazing story here in making. And so let me take this question to Madhu, and let me also check with you on a same in the same row. As being a woman, actually, any advantage which you have experienced, or any strength with people dealing, or creating new opportunity in the people you're working with?
I think in general, very similar patriarchal issues are there, but also there's an advantage that there are similar thinking women out there. So they then have an avenue to talk to somebody who's, doing something. Sometimes it could be even with a language barrier, but there is some common language as well, right? We have very similar experiences. So I think many of us bonded on that as well. So that becomes a common point. And also, especially when I am facilitating courses, And when we insist that women are a big part, at least if not more than 50%, at least 50% of that course, whatever it might be. We also know how women learn. Women learn differently from men.
Yeah.
There is a different way of learning. There is a lot of insecurity sometimes around the science subjects because, that's the stereotypical, we were not meant to be scientists kind of things, right? So there are certain things that I can figure out when somebody is moving a little back. So that is an advantage, knowing that I have a different way of learning. Each of us, we have different learner profiles, as we call it. So the learner profile of women is different. When you know that, you make sure that the women participants are taken care of. So that, I would say, has been an advantage for me. And also insisting that we have parity in numbers. If not anything, have at least a small group of women, and then they become, it's like the trainers, right? So when we ask people that question, who is out in the field, you have to represent those, not the bosses who sit in the office. So we did a PDC with land resource management people in Nagaland, and we insisted, even though I have very different background, there was still that commonality that I know what some of them, are going through or have, issues at home, plus being here in this training. So I think that's an advantage, putting yourself in the shoes, and also being the softer the softer skills help us. You're more approachable sometimes. That might be an advantage. But on the other hand, I had women before me. My mother before me started farming in her 40s as well, around the same time that I started. And so we had that. I didn't face what Aparna faced on the farm, but I still face it. It's a bit more subtle. It is not, actually, I would rather have somebody tell me on my face something rather than say behind the back. Here in the South, it is a little subtle. They still hesitate, but I think there's a lot more curiosity now, especially when you're doing perennial based farming in a peri-urban area. So men approach easier as well, not just women, but men approach easier because perhaps the judgment is not there. That I feel could be an advantage sometimes, because you're not judging, because you've been judged so often in your life that you don't judge anybody who's asking a question or who's being vulnerable enough to say, this is not working for us, what are you doing? So I think that might be an advantage sometimes.
What do you say, Malvika, in your experience with the project in your community and the teaching projects?
Yeah. Should I switch off my video again, or is it better?
So far it's good, yeah. It's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, for me, yes, I agree with Madhu on, one is, yeah, of course, we have, as women, we have things, the gender disparities are, kind of universal, and they just vary in certain degrees. And South definitely is a little more tolerant towards women being a little more vocal and, being able to express. For me, when I moved to the land, of course, I had the same thing. They thought I was a foreigner, and nobody wanted to talk to me because they thought I'm not from here. And one day I was just shouting in Kannada on the phone, and then they said, "Oh my God, like she speaks Kannada," and that was like the word spread in the village, saying that, like, that she's Namore, like she's one of us. And I think for me, that part has been so powerful, being able to speak the language. And I think I give a lot of credit to that aspect. So language became, one of those that dissolved those boundaries for me. They did have that because I'm also a little fair-skinned. They thought that, okay, there's this one rich woman bought some land and probably, trying to do something here. And it just took them a little while to to, when there were layers to that, slowly layers started peeling. And one is I went there to teach them that, there's so much chemical farming, there's over extraction of water, growing of cash crops. And the first year, my whole mindset was towards changing something which I thought, it should be or it should not be. And it just took me, about 6 months to realize that, these people already know so much. And I am the one who has to be learning from them. And, I am not in any space where I can teach them anything. My whole perspective shifted, as to I became the student. And for me, fortunately, for some reason, I don't know, it's been very easy for me to kind of build friendships with even men. I've never really had, I don't know, there's never been an intimidation of any sort, except for a couple instances where to quote an example, I was working with someone who was helping me, with infrastructure, and he would talk to me without even looking at me to someone who is not even standing next to me. He was like looking somewhere and then talking. Or if there was a man next to me, he would look at the guy and talk. I remember my partner who is an American, he doesn't even understand Kannada, and he's talking to him in Kannada and explaining things to him. And it took me a while to, initially I would get really angry and offended. I'm like, what the hell? Like, come on, talk to me, like, why are you talking? Why are you not looking at me? But then over a period of time, when those barriers also, started like breaking down, and even with the village, slowly friendships developed to the extent that I would have these farmer, like especially the older folks, farmer men who would just say, come on, hop in the tractor, let's go get some manure. And while I would run to sit next to the driver, they say, no, 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 sit on the manure pile. So I would be like sitting with them on the manure pile and then, coming back to the farm. So what I would like to, highlight here is the friendships and the time that we allow with the community, I think as women, we definitely have a privilege. And like Madhu was pointing out, they're okay, if they're always happy to offer help, and there is no kind of intimidation, or they're always I think in the rural, at least in the south, there's much more support that way. So yeah, for me that was one of the things. The gender itself proved to be a positive thing. But there were instances, although in my beginning setting up of the farm, where I was also taken for granted or taken for a ride, because I was in a totally new space. I had no background and I was like a total outsider. And I remember once I had to really use all the dirtiest slang words to just drive home my point. From then on, nobody messes with me in the village. They say, you can talk to her. She's super good. She'll keep her word. She'll pay you as she agrees, she'll all that, but you don't mess with her. So while using, it's like, the mother, the Kali, you use both the expressions of being gentle, the mother, the loving, the woman. And at the same time, you say, okay, you can't mess with me, like the boundaries are very clear. So yeah, I think as women, we have this dual power. Yeah, that's been and I've had some amazing people, supporting me through this journey, and a lot of women, a lot of men. And yes, there are, yeah, there never really has been. In my earlier work, not with the land, when I was working with an NGO, I remember working with a few women, and they felt so empowered that they wouldn't take any kind of unfairness back home. And the men boycotted the whole program, saying that our women don't listen to us anymore after they started coming to your program. So, there's that side to, empowering women also. It's very subtle, there's years of social conditioning and upbringing. And, they're quite limiting, they're quite disabling. But also for us to understand what battles to pick like I've been in situations where, you know, I had to either fight for the woman for her gender rights, you know, or like in terms of caste. But then I'm like, okay, I'm not here to pick this fight, you know, and that can happen through the work we do. It doesn't have to be a direct fight, you know. And if you're looking at gender equality, or, you know, like being compassionate towards women because they're burdened with additional work other than just the farm work, you know, there can be different ways of working towards achieving that, rather than, you know, confronting that aspect. And in rural areas, like Aparna was saying, you know, she became wise. Yeah, you don't like fight head on, you know, you just say, okay, you acknowledge that, okay, this is what happens, and then we you know, work our way around, you know, changing or shifting those equations.
Great. And with that, with Padma, I know there's like a huge women movement happening at Aranya and the transformation. Love to know about that and how, you know, so the Narsana and Padma are like two faces of the same coin, and how they play the role there. It's beautiful to see. Padma, I would love to know from you about how you coming to Aranya, the Zairabad Bidakini place, and the movement you created with the women there. And was you coming in any helpful or as an advantage to the project? Want to know that. You are mute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I came from the agrarian community, Manas. Like I came from the agrarian community. My family background is agriculture activities. After I finished my graduation, then I started working with one of the NGO. There I used to work with the 3,000 Dalit women. So there is a, from the 60 villages, landless women, and then those who are having lands, and then there is so many women issues were there. That time I started working with them. It's around 1 decade completely. I worked practically with the women, how women empowerment can takes place. So that's always in the development sector. We follow the class and caste and gender. This is the three aspects which we look into that. So if you start, like always, we think about how we can create the access and control over the resources. So if nothing is there, if there is no resources access to the woman, how they are going to be self-sufficient. So in that aspect, how that's like my entire journey started with how women can access the resources. Then first thing is Narsana and me worked on the land access. And then myself exclusively worked on the how the woman can access the financial access, the self-help movement, accessing the loans from the banks, how they can be in the decision making, how they can send their children to the school. This is where we started. And then when we started about the food security, food and all of the things, because if you don't have the land, how are you going to produce your food? How the food security will come? Then started working on the lands. Some of them, they have a lands, but it was fallow. How they can improve their lands to gain their food security. So that's where the first work started. So once they got the confidence, yes, we can produce the food because it's like a degraded and fallow lands. In that lands, if we started working with them, then they could see the results within the 2 to 3 years time period. So at least 50% of the food security is coming from their own lands. And that is one aspect. And then it's continuously starting and growing the food in their own lands. That is the building the confidence about the families and then women especially. Always when they work as a labor, if they worked in the landlords fields to access and to get their wages, they need to spend that they need to spend the time. They have to wait until the landlords gives the money. Otherwise, there is no food there for them. So they have to borrow the loans. They have to access the loans from the small loans. Even to get the PDS rice also, they need to get the 50 rupees loan. So since that time, I worked with the farmers. Then like once, like just imagine in the village, working as a wage labor and started getting the loans from the 1 rupee savings. and she's not going to the landlords. So within the savings, she got the loan to get the PDS rice, and then continuously with that. And a Dalit woman, if you want to walk on the streets, so she has to cover her face. She has to take the chapel in her hand. She has to walk. That is the situation. From that situation, how the woman can access the land. So that's where Narsanna has worked a lot, and myself, how the woman empowerment, financial access. So land resources and financial resources together, how women can be empowered. So just imagine in the family, a woman, nothing, no access is there, no decision making is there, having a 1 acre of the land on the name of the woman. Just imagine, on the name of the woman. So a Dalit woman having a land on the name of her, how she can access the many the resources. So banker will come ask about the loan. The other developmental corporation, SC corporation will come. Will you want to go for the open well or bore well? Can I support you? And then what crops can be grown, which the loan access has come, decision making, what crops can be grown, all that like decisions has come into the woman's hands. Like she can able to send their children for education. She can provide a good food for their family members. So everything has come with the access of the resources. That's where we worked in the tribal areas of Adilabad and then Jahirabad area where the woman works. So that the Dalit woman, that also like plays a major role. Access, control over the resources and the decision making. These were the given best of the best results. Some of them, so there is a natural resources in the villages, how the common pool resources can be used by the women. So there is we don't have the land, but there is a government land is available. How can we develop that land? How can we use that land as a food security, as a fodder security, taking care of the animals, grazing for the animals? Like that, the women empowerment started. And then where I started this self-help group movement in this area, now women got access of the resources. Like they don't want loans, but bankers are ready to come and providing the loans. It's now another kind of burden women is facing. What is the burden? Too much of because of the self-help movement. So all of them, they want to give the loans to the women. So woman is taking the responsibility of it because it's also burden on her to pay that loans. So she's not using that loans for herself. She's spending that money for the family purpose. And also like last few years when I'm working with very closely about the digital literacy and financial literacy with the women. So now the technology, I thought that women got empowered to use the technology. No, it is taking into the worst situation because all the banks are linked to their husband's phone number or son's phone number. So that is the big phones which they have. So they have a Google Pay, Phone Pay access. It means the account of the woman is controlled over by the men. So it means no financial on the name of the woman. So managed by the men. I don't know where it is leading to. So another kind of patriarchal behavior I could see with the women. So all these days they used to be at the farm level, growing the crops, providing a food. This is the situation too. So accessing so much of resources and also stressing out of them. It's a big stress on them. So there is a bank is coming, self-help group is coming. Every month they have to pay 6,000 rupees as a loan installment. How they are going to pay for that? So it means they have to work very hard. If whatever it may be, if they eat or not, first they have to pay the loan. That is the stress that at present scenario women are facing. So
This is
regarding about that, but coming to the agriculture and food production, yes, women now they are into the decision making. They are making their decisions. What fruit plants they want, what kind of trees they want, where they want to plant, how they are going to work, where they are going to sell. This is the decision making. Earlier it was not there. now women could able to make the decisions into the full farming systems, but it is also a support is required for the women. Again, the technological support. Now it's the kind of food which they are eating, it is not giving the stamina for them. There is a nutritional insecurity is there. So those who are having real farms and growing orchards, growing the vegetable crops, but the diversity has been again reducing. It's growing for the cash crops because they need money. And also considering of the climate change, the trust, like earlier they used to have the animals in their home. So the farmyard manure, the seeds, everything is in situ. Now everything is mechanized. Like if you want to do the farming, you need to have a money. But you need to pay for the tractor. Otherwise, earlier it is everything with the animals. So everybody has their own animals. Now the tractors, they have to pay for it. Seeds also, they're not keeping many people. It's like a monocropping system has come. All the inputs they have to buy from the market, again using for their land. So again, that is another kind of trend is going on.
So the one of the point I wanted to come to was the empowerment and the equality being coming from the top down. It's actually creating its own set of challenges, whether it's technology, whether it's banking. And the points I actually noted down on this was, you mentioned two different projects, one with the Dalit women and another with the tribal women. I would want to get into that, but we don't have time, but we need to do it on another call on that to understand the class, caste, and gender complexity, and which I also have noticed at Aparna's place, and also at Malvika's, the one discussion we had at the farm there, because these are very nuanced and it will be unreasonable to generalize or any of these issues to pause our understanding at that. My question here is how, as an educator, and especially targeting the like what Padma has also mentioned and what Madhu has also already answered. Let me ask Malvika about educating the women folk locally. What has been your experience with them, with your 1,000 Tree project also, for example, or creating projects in the permaculture projects which you do?
Yeah, for me, personally, I have experienced that women are play a very influencing role in decision making. Although they're not at the forefront, at least in the projects that I've worked with. And I won't say all, but in the older generation, I see that women are consulted, when something needs to be, decided on. This is what I've experienced with the 1,000 Tree project. And there is also this general shyness, and there's also this, they feel that because they're not educated, they're not worthy enough to, talk or, engage in conversations or discussions about any project or any kind of planning. And I see with a little bit of goading, they open up, and it's quite insightful, and they bring very valuable perspectives to projects and to the work. And yeah, the only disadvantage that I have seen, I mean, I won't say disadvantage, or the downside is many a times they're caught up with housework, and there's a break in the continuity of these conversations. And most often it just becomes that the man is the face of it, and when they go back and share, I don't think it's shared in those many details where they understand the intensity of the projects. So we started looking at whenever we were doing, I mean, especially when we did some vocational training like beekeeping and mushroom cultivation, we ensured that they either bring the sister or the daughter or the wife, along with them. So to make the trainings more effective, so even like with mushroom cultivation, we've had, and it's really amazing how once we started getting like actively pushing for women, saying that if there are 10 men, there should be at least say 6 to 7 women, at least like 5 to 6 women. The women started collectivizing themselves and organizing the tasks around how they're going to go about a certain project. So yeah, I mean, there are multiple. I mean, you can't. I can just speak from this particular one project's perspective, where I've also seen in an instance where they said, okay, we don't know how to read and write, but we can learn, how to do our signatures and some basic things where they felt that they could speak about those things, with so much of comfort and confidence, with me, because a lot of their signatures are needed in getting approvals and getting loans and signing for schemes and stuff like that. So slowly what we started is also the political literacy, where they were made aware of their rights. And like Padma was talking, there's a lot that is where underrepresentation of women, access to resources, access to information, all of these aspects are intertwined, and you cannot look at any of them in isolation. They're all like connected. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel the constraint of time to actually, explore
Yeah.
this topic. But
I
yeah.
really feel, it's cruel actually to have so little time to be on this topic. Let me come to Aparna quickly and understand. She has a large team of people looking after the crops, the animal, the the new project they have set up. So what is how many women are there, or how do you have a leaning towards them, or do they have do they find you more difficult to work with or easier to work with, or it's common for everybody? How's that with your team there?
So how it all started was in Noida. I knew there was a disparity. I knew women in villages had struggles just like women elsewhere, probably more, and I had a general idea. But when it actually hit me was a couple of women I befriended around my farm in the Noida farm uh, died in childbirth on two bullock carts near the farm,
Oh.
right? And this happened in 2014 itself, the year I started to farm, right? Or maybe early 2015. It hit me like a ton of bricks because these were women I had kind of got to know. They were pregnant, and I didn't understand. I didn't expect that living in Noida, wherever you live, that you could actually go through something like this. I thought this would happen somewhere in the interiors of some probably remote part of India, and so this was basic lack of medical care, and they could not approach a civil hospital because you had to register in a civil hospital, and they didn't know that, and they didn't know what they could avail as a person who could go for underprivileged person who could go for such treatment. And when the last minute when they approached the private hospital said, if you don't keep 30,000 on the table, you can't get admitted. And this is how, because they were running pillar to post for almost a day, and I had no clue because I was new there and they didn't approach me, right? And the one I landed up at the farm one morning, and over a period of 3 months, two women died. And that's the time I kind of woke up and I said, listen, this is like really, really crazy. This is happening in Noida, and it's not even like in some remote part. And then the more I kind of spoke with these people, I realized the inequality or the privilege is so less that I don't have any. I had these visions even then saying that I'll learn and then I'll share this information about organic farming with them and we'll all grow food. I had this utopian vision of how I'm going to train so many women and bring a forge here. And here I found that they didn't have health care, they didn't have education, they couldn't read and write, they were dying on a thela or a bullock cart. I was like, how can I go and talk to them about clean food? This is very, very far away. Here I have to talk about real brass tacks, right? And that's how the self help group started. It didn't start with any great idea of creating I didn't know what to do. So I started a self help group. I just said, okay, at least let me get the women together. At least let them come to a place where they come, let them talk. I wanted to know more. I wanted to help them. And I was also appalled that they had not reached out to me. I said, at least I wish I had known that night. So many thoughts in my mind. And the first thing I did was I spoke to a friend who connected me with a GP, and the GP started visiting our farm, and we had started a free OPD twice a week. This I started in 2015. And then we started a farm school. I didn't know what I was doing. It was just a thatch. And this one girl who was done a BA in Hindi, she said, ma'am, main aungi sikhane. I said, oh, yeah, come. So it was all a knee-jerk reaction to what I saw. And I wasn't sure what will happen. But over a period of many years now, lot of women started to join us. I can't say it's not the numbers, but I think for me, it was more even if it were those 20 women, for me, why that was a lot is the narrative built. And people around us started to come to us. They started to visit the OPD. They started to talk. These women, I could see the rapid change in them from how they were when they came into the farm as very diffident, scared people in, what can I say, Gungat. And this group of women have now, the original group, have moved with me into the new farm as well. So they continue to be there. Their husbands began to work with us, and we became a family, And today, those women have become our mentors for the other women. And it's all happened organically. It's not something we have planned or decided. But what started as horror, I mean, I was so sad because it started like that. And I thought, how can we even talk about organic food and clean food where we don't even meet basic needs? And that narrative continues. Wherever I've gone, now I've moved into a new village, the narrative continues. Clean food is a distant dream. It is part of the story, of course, always, but the main narrative has always been brass tacks. These women have no employment in UP villages. There are no industries there. There's no scope to work. And they are in great need. They have no financial independence. It's also very patriarchal, and there is nowhere to voice their problems or even talk. Or so it's been for me a very moving experience personally, but also a very enriching experience because I've seen how these women come. So when you say who's coming to the farm, all these local women, the work is very it's in I don't know about where others are, but here, for instance, dung cakes will only be made by women. Nobody else will make it. And weeding is preferably done by women. The men won't do it. Sorting grains, only women. Men don't like to do it. So the work is already defined. You will not find the men for some of these jobs. It will be the women who'll come. And frankly, they do a much better job. They are much more meticulous. They don't have a phone. It's a tragedy, but none of them have phones. It's like a very minuscule percentage of them have phones. And even if they have phones, it's the prehistoric phone, that Nokia type of phone, which has no nothing, no content on it. They don't know Paytm. They don't know. I mean, they don't even have a touch phone. So maybe it's still because of that. They work from dawn to dusk meticulously, clean up and go. There is no stress at all. I've always found it easier to work with the women. In the villages, their wages are lesser than the men, and the panchayat decides those wages, and they prefer you keep to those wages, because if you decide to pay equally, you're likely to the women will not come to work for you because the men will not let them come to work for you, right? So there are a lot of things we work with. I don't like to go against the local thing, but I work with it. I work around it, so that I can help them. So a lot of the women who have joined us, they form the self-help group now. We have a group in Uttarakhand, which is about 50 women. And we have a group in our farm here itself, that is in two places, that is reasonable. It's not large, but I think it's very effective because for those women it's made a difference. And what I do, I'm hoping, and as a probably is like another one of our dreams, is to co-opt more and more women. See, it had the problems were like we got a Silai machine, but they didn't know how to measure because they couldn't read numbers. So our challenges was something else. It's not like you could just call them and teach Silai. So or the parents will not allow the children to come out, the girls to come out. They'll say, God knows who's on the farm. So we had to create safe spaces within the farm to make the parents understand that they can send their daughters. It's safe. Again, the narratives had to be soft. If we had spoken very aggressively about modernizing this program, I mean, the thing of saying, suppose we say no child marriage or no, thing, I think it'll all be seen as some kind of aggressive. So we've been going with the flow. In the process, the women have learned a lot. They are completely different women today over the last few years, much more confident. With us, they now go and sit in all sorts of farmers markets, and they've even gone to Park Hotel in Delhi and sat there at the table. Initially they would nudge me and say didi tum bolo and all that. Now they are very they have no gungat and all, and we've taught them, they bargain for their wares. It's been a huge growth. Also, we found that with that one GP who comes, we solved so many of their problems. They couldn't talk about menstrual issues. They couldn't talk about maternal health, pediatric health. We had to we showed them Padman and toilet in a closed room because they were so worried some man will walk in while they saw that film. So it's very cute, it's lovely, and they are beautiful, vibrant, extremely talented women. So please don't think, I don't mean to say that I went and changed. No, I think they already are full of talent and vivacious and beautiful women, but they just didn't have that collective. And something happens to women when they come together. It's a beautiful thing to watch. In Uttarakhand, these 50 women have we put a seed money. Sorry, I'm taking a bit of time. I'm trying to finish it fast, but we put a seed money of 20,000 to start the Uttarakhand project. Okay, the room costs us 2,000 rupees a month. So we just put up a clock, some chatais, and brought some wool and a tea kettle. They said, we'll bring the milk, chai patti rak diya, nothing, just basics. Now they own that space. They celebrate every function there. They meet together every day. They say it's a relief for us to get out of the house and go somewhere and be. So I think there's a lot of empowerment in bringing women together. We take a lot of things for granted in the city. Even this little space means a lot to them, and they begin to own it, and it's really nice to watch them. So we've gotten thus far. Now they are making a lot of stuff which we are trying to sell, market for them. And they've learned to do their own accounts, which is like big deal. They have their own account books, so everything is a step. It takes time. And the doctor who started coming, we started talking to them about sag and sattu, because even when you talk about nutritional needs being met, when they go to the doctor says have apple, pomegranate, which nobody can afford. He says fruits cow. So we started looking for better alternatives to tell them, why don't you eat better things like this? And these kind of conversations, narratives have helped them a lot, and helped us also learn a lot from them. So this has become, they also now sow weed and all that, but the work by and large in UP is defined. It's not like they can step into all spaces. Yeah.
And these are going to be tough steps, but they are being taken. I'm very inspired to hear of this. What do you say, Madhu, about your experience as an educator also, and also as at the farm?
At the farm, so at the farm, very similar. In general, there are gender-defined roles. Similar weeding, things like that. But they also figured out very early that I don't like working with. It's not that I don't like working with men. Like Aparna said, I prefer working with women. Mainly because they're very hardworking, I think. And also, I know where the money then goes. So I set a very, for me, entry into the farmers, if you drink and you spend your money on drink, you don't have a job on my farm. It was very clear. Like Malvika said, all that gentleness is there, but then you put your... One thing I saw the women in my farm change over time is they are very proud to say that we do the men's job. I have 3 brush cutters. They run simultaneously sometimes. And initially there was a hesitance, but they figured it out. Now they know cold start of the machine. Of course, I have to scream and yell sometimes to remind them about 4T oil and 2T oil. Now we've got some system. I've got all people who don't read and write. Forget English or Hindi, Telugu also. None of them read and write, right? So how do you now, that is also part of education. How do you work with, how do you teach them a system which works for you, works for them? So I don't work with large communities of women. My innocence, because I'm still in a private space, I do know that all of the women working for me have their own bank accounts. Their salaries are going into their own bank accounts. And that's only because I kind of insisted on it and told them who's going to look after you. So that whole idea, I would say in the 10 years, the separation of bank accounts, that's been my little mighty victory in 4 or 5 people. In terms of the education, it has to, you've got to ask them what is their problems and what do they want to learn. Very similarly, when we were working with train the trainers as well, they know their community better. As a mainlander, as an urban educated woman, I have to know that their experiences are different from mine. So I have to decolonize my own urban education and my own way of doing things. So the idea is, so if I'm talking about ecology, and there's a lot of things in the Northeast which are very cultural. They're very different from what I have perhaps experienced. So how do you, without judgment, raise some issues which are a part of their community? So me coming and telling them you should not be doing this won't gel well at all, right? I'm an outsider and I'm also being judgmental. So how do you ask those questions? Is killing birds an issue, or is overkill of birds an issue? So the answers have to come from them. So when we work with an NGO that's working with the community, again, it's again to kind of say, how do you address these issues? And we work with mostly gender-based organizations or something like that. They work with women again. But again, how do you make sure it's not just women that you're working with? How do you change that perspective that in this day and age, we can't talk about changing how women's issues or women's way of doing things without addressing that even with the young men in the group, or making sure that there is parity in. So if I'm insisting that there is women along with the men, we also insist that there are men along with women. So when we are doing courses, we make sure if it's too many women, we kind of say, don't you have men working in your organization? So that's also very true for us. So for me, it goes hand in hand. It's especially with the changing the generations, right? You've got your grandmother's generation, the mother generation, and the younger people, younger men and women who are thinking differently. So how do you bridge that generational gap also then becomes important, because these are the kids who go perhaps become a TIS graduate somewhere in Guwahati and then come back, and then they're working with the women in the community who are their mothers, or grandmothers. But then there is a huge knowledge among all 3 generations. So how do you do this intergenerational transfer of knowledge, and how do you then keep the peace within the, how do you peacefully do that rather than this? I also don't go against the tide. I work with the tide. So how do you move with that? That's important. In the new educational space, how do you work with intergenerational knowledge, which is different now? There's technology here, and then there is vast experience in the previous generation. So how do you bridge that gap? Then becomes, we facilitate that information rather than tell it straight out. Right? So how do you then have these conversations around ecology, slash and burn agriculture, all those things. But again, without insisting that these are the solutions. The solutions have to come from within because they have to implement. I sadly am not there when they are implementing, right? So how do you make sure that it is how do I say, it's an acknowledgement that comes from within, that yes, we need to change. And then you can go ask for what are other people doing, so and so is doing this, then the information transfer happens.
I like the conversations here this time, the 6th edition, because these are so nuanced, and terms like going with the flow and finding opportunities, finding gaps. This is happening. This is so kind of, it was unheard. It's so mechanical so far in other conversations I've had. This is a very inclusive, it's just a beginning, it seems, that we have had, but so many seeds and sprouts I see here happening. I got few other people here. If there are, I had more questions, but I think we have to do another session, take 2 and 3 for more questions. But if anybody has a question here, please feel free. We have a few minutes remaining for Q&A. We have got Mrinalini here, Caroline here, Meha, Richa, Sharat Jain, I know, Sonali, Veena. So if any question, any thing we want to share also, ask, interact, please go ahead.
I would like to say thank you. I mean, I've learned a lot today. It's been very enlightening. In fact, I'm signing up for one of Malavika's courses, but I can't afford the 42K. So I'm waiting around. I'm earning. Yeah.
Right.
I hope there's another session about this. I mean, it feels cut short right now.
So put it out, put this intention out, and I'm sure something will work out for you.
Absolutely. I'm planning to open up. I mean, I want to start something like this in Shantiniketan, West Bengal. But the land is very, like, it's terrible there. So I've started putting layers of manure. It is slowly growing. I'm hoping it becomes something in the future.
Madhushi has Mrinalini, speak with Madhu and Padma and Malvika, take them offline. Yeah. Maya, how are you doing?
I have a question. May I?
Yes, please, Veena,
Yes,
please.
please.
Okay, sorry. Thank you very much. It was a very nice session. I'm not into farming, etc., but I come from the gender space. And what was very interesting to see is that, I mean, there are so many different entry points, for all of you. One from urban, you see this whole caste, class, gender that one talks about. But my question to all of you is, okay, there are these problems. I mean, especially what Padma tells me, was talking about, is very concerning. That, you say, okay, loans to women, land to women, but somehow all of this somehow backfires on women in in the manner in which patriarchy works. So my question was, what are the policy changes, or what is it that you want to see? And what is when you say, okay, women as landowners or women as, do you see a difference in their life vis-a-vis violence, domestic violence, etc.? And secondly, what is the state policy change that you think would help?
I think Padma can answer that. Yeah.
Yes. Now, like needs has been changed of the woman. Like earlier, there is a need of like food security and other things. Now there is like another kind of policies has been changed, but how those things can be enforced, that is what important. Now another biggest issue has come again, alcohol. So there is a empowerment is there, financial access is there, all the access is there. But this is another kind of alcoholic issues are there. And again, women is the victim, and then children are there. So there is again getting affected in the poorer communities. I don't know how they will come out of it.
But you do see a change. I mean, you see, is there a change in, domestic violence is reduced, or some kind of, what are the positive changes that one is seeing?
So I can see that domestic violence has been reduced if you compare with the previous a decade time or 2 decades. Like I was in the development sector since 90s. That time women issues are so bigger. Now that kind of issues are not there. The food is abundance now. Abundance of like availability of food security because of the PDS system, it is available. Okay. So employment generation is there, money access is there, no employment like other way around because they are going for MG, NRGP. Other agriculture sector is getting affected by the personals, lack of personals. So these things are there. Policy level, like because self-help movement, women are good because of that they should not overimpose also. There's just so many financial, like there is a access. The financial institutions are providing loans, but at the same time, so secure financial institutions are required. So earlier we have a very bad experiences with the microfinance institutions. Now again, another different banks are coming up and putting them pressure, and so they're providing at the doorsteps. It is also access is not so good. The security is required.
So one problem is getting solved, but as we go forward, some things are getting resolved, but more new challenges are coming up. It's a pretty vicious space, but yeah, some positivity is happening. Oh, Madhu, you want to add something to this?
I just wanted to say one thing. If there was one policy, intervention, I would say this whole thing about insisting about education, not just for the woman, the girl child, but also for the the male child. This access to education, I think, is the starting point. So if there are barriers to entry after a certain age, I'm actually pretty I come from a village which is pretty education geared. I see a lot of girls going for graduation and stuff. But I think in general, if I were to say, how do you change things, is education. And this has been statistically proven. I actually sat in a presentation in October, mid-October, where this gentleman actually went through numbers, birth rate numbers, reproduction rate numbers. They all changed in states where education was emphasized. And in fact, the birth rates in some of the states are one or less than one now. And that's all because the rate of education is high. So I think somewhere, if we can tie policy to education, I think that would be a big overarching, ladkiyon ko padhao. I remember one small program of giving a bicycle to a middle school girl child changed the family's way of thinking. And this girl then went to high school and so on because they wanted to have access to that bicycle. This was in Bihar, bicycle yojana or something it was called. So I think education is the one. If, as Veena ji asked, policy, I would say insist on at least higher secondary education for both the children in the villages, and then from there.
Aparna has to say something, please.
So I personally feel some kind of incentive by the state, by the government for property rights for women. I think it all boils down to those kind, if they own property, I feel they have a certain security. That is, so some kind of incentive with stamp duty, or I'm sorry, I'm not an expert on this, but I'm just thinking on my feet here. Some incentive by which the men will be attracted to transferring property rights on their wives' names. I think that's hugely empowering. That's one. And two, entrepreneurship for women, incentives for small businesses. In at least where I am farming, the Anganwadis are not functioning. They're there in name. but there are no businesses for women. I think there is scope if women-oriented businesses are kind of given incentives to subsidized along with this property rights. I think it's very big because the woman owns no property, and I feel that's actually her problem. I mean, of course, education, I agree with Madhu, push for education for women. But what is also I've noticed in the villages is once they study 8th or 10th standard, then they don't want to come to farming. It's a lit in the sense, how do we balance that out? How do we educate them and yet make sure they don't leave the farming space? Maybe the incentive will come from these businesses to create entrepreneurship opportunities, because if the woman earns in the family, there's an automatic respect. So I mean, these are the two thoughts that I think.
I think we can add the life skills, like the skill, like especially with the girl children, the skills are more important. If they have a skills, entrepreneurship and other things will come up. Now the education is there some extent, the skills need to be improved, and then these things are very much needed at present scenario.
Thank you.
The land rights are like really skewed in the especially in the rural spaces and the green spaces, like some
Actually,
statistics.
land rights are very cultural as well. Upper
Yeah.
middle class women also don't have lands on their names.
I
I am
don't
working
think
on
they-
lands which are not on my name and will never probably will be on my name. It's a very cultural thing.
The awareness of right to land, right to property in the women, it doesn't exist where I know it's not there in the urban spaces also. Some sort of a law has to come, like enforcing that they will get the share in the property, passing it on to just the male child to be made illegal. Some sort of a law has to kind of come
No,
in.
2005, there was an amendment to the Hindu Succession Act.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that is there, but that
They make women give affidavits saying
yes,
that I have received my share at the time of marriage. So people find ways of circumventing the
yeah,
law.
it has to made compulsory. Something like that has to amendment has
Like
to
in the
happen.
Islam,
Aparna, it's your
under
domain.
Muslim law, you cannot deny the legal heir by any. So if daughter has a right, daughter has to get her right. You
That's
cannot deny her the right.
That's
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, in Karnataka, I mean, in my region also, when the land registrations happen, the women, despite legally having equal rights and equal share, they come there, they sign the papers, and they get some kind of a share which is not even equivalent. It's not even proportionate to what they're supposed to be receiving, and it's become a common practice. But that's where political literacy, literacy where they know of their rights and what it means to them is important as well.
For me, the takeout will be for the Farmversity projects to introduce this as a curriculum module or something which can be made accessible to all the projects, to be introduced to, whether it's from PDC project or NGO trainings, anything which be the project, like what Karan is doing in the tribal area in Jadol, things to have half a day, 1 day introduction to these things. Something, a basic thing can be created like a part of the curriculum, made accessible, legally vetted, and converted into local language, local law to be something like that. Karan, what do you say to that? Karan is
नहीं मैं म्यूट था, अनम्यूट किया मैंने।
हाँ
तो
Karan?
बिल्कुल मुझे ऐसा लगता ही है इसको अपन को करना चाहिए। और इसके साथ साथ मेरे मन में एक और सवाल चल रहा था, तो मतलब 836 हो गया, क्या पूछ लूं क्या?
हाँ हाँ, पूछ लीजिए हाँ।
तो सवाल थोड़ा ऐसा है कि यहाँ मतलब ट्राइबल कम्युनिटी है, तो वो रिलेशनशिप वगैरह के लिए काफी ओपन अप रहते ही हैं। तो मेरे साथ दिक्कत ये आ रही है कि अभी जैसे मेरा चौथा बैच चल रहा है फेलोशिप का, तो 15 के 15 लड़के ही आते हैं। और लड़कियों को हम लोग नहीं ले पा रहे हैं। तो शुरुआत में हमने थोड़ा ट्राई किया था, पर वो उनके आपस में रिलेशनशिप बन जाते हैं तो फिर पेरेंट्स को दिक्कत होती है। एक दो लड़कियां चली भी गई थी, तो फिर उसके बाद हमने सिर्फ लड़कों को ही लेना शुरू कर दिया। तो अच्छा, फिर हम ये भी वेट करने लग गए कि कोई अ, महिला कोऑर्डिनेटर आएगी तब हम लड़कियों के बैच को शुरू करेंगे। पर मुझे लगता है कि नहीं, कुछ तो रास्ता निकालना चाहिए। तो क्या बेटर ऑप्शंस हो सकते हैं, कोई सुझाव दें तो हम अगले बैच में कम से कम 2 या 3 लड़कियों को तो लेकर शुरुआत कर सकें।
अच्छा,
Yeah.
तो
Unmarried girls and unmarried boys, that's a big thing in farm schools. I've seen it in another farm school as well, the hesitancy rate, because of that. But perhaps, Karanji, you could also think about women only group maybe once, a shorter, succinct program, which is short, like maybe you start off. There's a principle in permaculture called small and slow solutions. So how about we do like a 1 week thing to start with, or 2 week thing, and all just girls, and then perhaps you get some how do you say, inroads, and then you perhaps go to a larger integrated program, maybe something which is more
okay.
specific to them and coordinated by women along with you, of course. And then you slowly perhaps think of integrating them along with the larger group.
Interesting. In fact, it'll be easier. I feel that for a 1 week program to get a facilitator also to
Yeah.
come to the Farmversity and to work, unlike like you have a three-month program for a one. So some things they are start slow and
That's
small.
slow. Yeah.
Yeah. So we are now officially out of time. With the consent of people, we can continue the conversation if there are more questions. But people are now free to leave. Uh, Anything to be added? Just I'll wait 5 seconds for hands to be raised. Otherwise, I'll start closing. Okay, so looks we don't have more questions happening. So thanks, my dear friends, Madhu, Aparna, Malvika, and Padma for joining us today, sharing your insights and stories. And I think it's just, for me, these are just tips of the icebergs, four different icebergs here. So much deeper to dive into this particular subject. And please share your ideas. What can be our next topic? In one particular thing, for example, the land rights, educating about that, or educational issues, or even SHGs, setting up SHGs, processing. What are the various ideas? Like Mrinalini said, and Shanti Niketan, the challenges which she's facing locally, and if they are working. So please share these ideas with me. And we would love to keep the conversation alive. And I wanted to hear Meha, but maybe another time, because she is one lone ranger I know, working every day at the farm in Gurgaon, and and keep sharing. So she's using Instagram as her tool. I know. Oh, she has raised her hand. Please, Meha, go ahead. You have something to say.
Hi. Hi. I just want to say that I'm so happy to see all of you together. Like, I think I've met most of you and I know all of you except Malvika, but I've signed up for your course, Malvika, the healing relationship with land. So I have a small farm in Gurgaon, and it's a very urban space. Like, we're surrounded by cricket fields, horse stadiums, schools. So I mean, I have access to the urban community, and I've been doing like women's sharing circles. But I'm wondering, like, how do I tap into the rural community? Like, I don't know where to find those women and how to interact with them in a way.
You have to ask me this question, Meha.
Hanji, I have to come and talk to you about this. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
This is our local problem.
Yeah, that's
Our
true.
farm is 5
But I really
kilometers
like
from
the
where I
idea
live.
of
Hmm.
self-help groups and GP and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Mhm. Look at, speak to Azad maybe, and that's one thing. Shubha will be a good person to speak to.
Yeah.
Interact with Saurabh and Vaishali, maybe they're your neighbors. Yeah, that's something. But yeah, that's a good, I think I was hoping that, I was expecting this will be your next step anyway. Now you started showing
Yeah.
up, like Aparna got totally pulled into the project. I see, Aparna, she's in your path. The way you've been
I'm
great.
Hi. Hi.
And I think you have visited her farm also. May I
Yeah.
visit Aparna's farm? Yeah. Great. So let me now say bye-bye for now, and hope to see you everybody again very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye. Bye.
All right, Kala. Acha, please send me a debrief and any feedback on the chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.